Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and deconstruct a choice that probably keeps a lot of us up at night. Society loves to hand us a very rigid script when it comes to housing, right? We're told, basically from day one, that renting is just throwing your money away and buying a house is the ultimate responsible path to wealth. But what happens when we strip away all that emotion, ignore our parents' advice for a second, and actually run the hard math over a 2-decade horizon? Well, the answers are going to totally surprise you because the standard narrative leaves out some massive silent variables.
To really understand this, we're going to look at a tale of two different paths. First, we have Sarah. She decides she's going to rent an apartment for the next 20 years. And then we have Emma, who goes the traditional route and buys a starter home. Now, they both walk away from their 20s thinking they made the absolute smartest, most responsible choice possible. But what's really fascinating here is that both paths have these huge hidden costs and hidden benefits that almost no one talks about. Both of them are missing a piece of the puzzle. You see, one forgot to count the flexibility, and the other, well, she forgot to count the walls.
So to keep this experiment completely fair, we're putting Emma and Sarah on the exact same starting line with identical finances. They're the same age, living in the exact same city, both earning $58,000 a year, and, this is key, they both have exactly $40,000 sitting in the bank. The only difference is what they do with that money today and how they manage their housing costs over the years that follow. We want to see how these choices truly compound over 2 full decades.
To make this super easy to digest, we'll follow them chronologically through these key milestones. We'll start right here at year 0 and check in at years 3, 7, 10, 15, all the way to the big 20-year mark. Let's look at their initial moves at year 0. Emma takes her $40,000 and drops it as a down payment on a $220,000 starter home. She takes on a 30-year mortgage at a 6.5% interest rate, which brings her monthly payment to $1,580. Sarah takes a totally different route. She takes her entire $40,000 and drops it into a total stock market index fund. She rents a comparable apartment for $1,400 a month and automates her investments, putting the difference directly into the market every single month. Now, the immediate aftermath of this is largely psychological. Instantly, society applauds Emma for being a responsible adult. I mean, she gets a key, she gets a story to tell, she gets a housewarming party. Sarah, on the other hand, she just gets a lease and a brokerage account. And let's be real, nobody throws a party for a lease. Instead, Sarah faces this persistent, kind of unfair pressure from friends and family, constantly asking when she's going to stop throwing money away. This cultural script heavily shapes how both women feel about their choices, long before the actual math has had any time to play out. Okay, let's jump to year 3 and see how this builds. For the first few years, Emma is absolutely living the dream, painting walls, hanging shelves, making it hers. Meanwhile, Sarah is watching her rent creep up by 3 to 5% a year, feeling that mild social pressure. But let's lift the hood and look at the actual numbers. Emma's early payments brilliantly illustrate what we call the illusion of early equity. Over 3 years, she's paid roughly $56,800 toward her mortgage. But look at where that money actually went. Nearly $47,000 of it went to interest, property taxes, and insurance. It's essentially rent paid to the bank instead of a landlord. Less than $10,000 actually went toward the principal balance of her home. And on top of that heavy interest, Emma also had to buy a new water heater, fix a storm-damaged fence, and pay for a surprise plumbing repair. Ouch. So when you factor in a modest 3% home appreciation, Emma's equity sits at about $58,000. Meanwhile, Sarah has paid her rent, faced 0 surprise contractor bills, and diligently invested her gap money. Her portfolio sits at roughly $57,000. The crucial point here? After paying for water heaters and broken fences, Emma is completely neck and neck with Sarah. Literally neither one is truly ahead yet. But jumping ahead to year 7, the narrative shifts entirely. This is where the harsh reality of physical maintenance collides with the silent growth of Sarah's stock portfolio. By year 7, Emma has spent nearly $18,000 on uninvited repairs. You know, the fun stuff, like a new HVAC system, a refinished driveway, a cracked foundation. When you subtract those massive maintenance costs from her home's growth, her real equity is about $74,000. Sarah, meanwhile, has never had to call a plumber. Her index funds have been soaring, with 9 to 10% annual returns, pushing her liquid portfolio to roughly $98,000. And guys, this shatters the cultural myth entirely. For the first 7 years, renting and investing actually puts Sarah firmly in the lead. She wasn't throwing her money away. She was strategically redirecting it into an asset that doesn't suffer from burst pipes or require a brand new roof. She totally bypassed the 1 to 2% annual maintenance drag that homeowners inevitably face. But hold on, let's slow down as we reach year 10, because the momentum is about to shift again. See, the early years favor the renter, because buying is loaded with those upfront costs and heavily front-loaded interest. But as time marches on, the structural advantages of a 30-year fixed mortgage really start to flex their muscles. Over the last decade, Sarah's rent hasn't exactly stayed still. It's crept up from her original $1,400 all the way to $1,850 a month. And this right here exposes the single strongest argument against renting: inflation. Sarah has absolutely no control over her housing costs. As her rent rises, that gap of extra cash she has available to invest each month is rapidly shrinking. This is the pivot point. Emma's fixed payment of $1,580 hasn't changed a single cent since day one. Her mortgage is quietly building wealth in the background, compounding silently while she sleeps, and perfectly shielding her from the rising cost of living. Sarah, on the other hand, is seeing her investment capital eaten up by her landlord. Emma's real equity is now at $114,000, while Sarah's portfolio is at $148,000. The gap is narrowing, and it's narrowing fast. Let's move to year 15, where the trajectories cross for good. The mass has finally caught up to Sarah's rent increases. By this point, her rent has climbed to roughly $2,200 a month. Their net wealth is almost tied now. Emma is at $188,000 in real equity, and Sarah sits at $205,000 in her portfolio. But you have to look at the monthly housing costs. Sarah is paying $600 more per month just to live, basically unable to invest any extra cash at all. She is fully exposed to a rental market with absolutely no ceiling, while Emma is paying drastically below market rate for her housing. Finally, we reach the 20-year horizon. After 2 decades of compounding, maintenance costs, stock market growth, and rent hikes, let's see where Emma and Sarah actually land. Now, if you just look at the raw numbers on a spreadsheet, you might be surprised. Sarah actually has $19,000 more in total net wealth, $310,000 compared to Emma's $291,000. If we stop the clock right here, today, the disciplined renter technically wins the battle. But we have to look at what they're facing next, because life doesn't just magically end at year 20. The most interesting part of this 20-year mark is the stark contrast in their futures. Emma's housing cost is about to freeze. Her mortgage is almost completely paid off, meaning her future housing costs are going to drop to near zero, save for some taxes and insurance. Meanwhile, Sarah's rent is now sitting at $2,650 a month, and it's going to keep climbing for the rest of her life, with no physical asset backing it up. Emma is entering a phase of extreme cash flow freedom. However, before we crown Emma the absolute winner, we really must consider the type of wealth they hold. Sarah's wealth is highly liquid. She has over $300,000 sitting in an account she can access in days, with zero closing costs or realtor fees. Emma's wealth is quite literally trapped inside walls. To access her equity, she either has to sell the house, pay 8 to 10% in transaction fees, or take out a loan against her own money. Flexibility and liquidity are worth real, tangible money. Emma is also exposed to immense concentration risk. Think about it. Her entire financial victory over the last 20 years is riding on one specific house in one specific neighborhood in one specific city. If a major employer leaves town, or if her specific neighborhood declines, her entire net worth takes a direct, unmitigated hit. Sarah's portfolio, however, is spread across thousands of companies across the entire global economy. So the crucial takeaway here is that renting actually wins hands down if you meet these specific conditions. First, if you're going to move within 5 to 7 years, renting protects you from those massive buying and selling fees. Second, if you live in a city with an unfavorable rent-to-price ratio, where buying is drastically more expensive monthly than renting, renting wins. But the absolute biggest factor, number 3, you must have the discipline to actually invest the difference, just like Sarah did, every single month automatically. Emma thought buying was the only way adults built wealth. Sarah thought renting made her way smarter than everyone throwing money at a bank. But neither ran the numbers for their own specific timeline. Ultimately, following a cultural script without running the specific math for your own life, your own city, and your own goals is the most dangerous financial choice you can possibly make. Because the answer that includes everything is the only answer that matters.
The next time someone pressures you at a dinner party, telling you that renting is throwing money away or that buying is the only real investment, I want you to ask them this final, profound question. Did you include everything? Did you count the maintenance, the opportunity costs, the liquidity, the inflation? Think about it and make the choice that actually fits your life.